to... Is this not on? Is that better? So I'm going to be using notes because I only have a little bit of time to do this, and I'm told that I go off track, so stay with me, okay? I've been asked to talk about direct practice in after school and how that impacts how children learn. And so I thought I'd start with sort of how we got to where we are today with LA's Best with a program called Connecting for Success, a guide for building healthy after-school communities. It's a long title, but the real story is about building relationships. From the very beginning in 1988, LA's Best was tasked with the notion of making learning fun and engaging for kids. And we were tasked to help develop contributing citizens with a mandate to reduce a tolerance for violence and teach empathy. The primary question from our inception was, how can LA's Best make a difference in children's lives? And we began with the premise that there was never one way of knowing, that it was the responsibility of staff to know kids, and that it was responsibility to know them more, and how to observe kids and how to figure out kids was far more important than knowing how to teach them. Time in the day school is regulated and often prescriptive. We believe after school should follow a set of values that have not changed for us. That the value of connecting to what is real to a child and the value of connecting children to their communities is as important to building relationships and sustaining quality programs. We realized that we needed to understand kids more, and we needed to realize that we needed to understand the impact that staff could have. We wanted to break the cycles of physical and emotional violence and adversity, and perhaps most importantly, we needed to address the factors that influence those issues. We knew from the beginning that a daily experience for many children is interacting with someone they know, someone they care about, or somebody they love that's doing something illegal or immoral. And what we learned from staff is that we needed to find ways to let kids know that it's okay to love someone who's doing something wrong, that it's not their job to fix it, that it's not their job to make things right. It's their job to stay safe and healthy and make good choices. What we know is that our kids often harbor a profound sense of guilt, and that their faces have a survival affect from horrific lived experiences. So we took what we knew about brain research, that prolonged exposure to stress and traumatic events can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, and that children who have PTSD have an altered baseline state of stimulation, meaning they deal with things in a fight or flight mode, and that children who suffer PTSD have less capacity for tolerance in their everyday life. These are the children that need consistent nurturing relationships and positive connections. We know these are some of our kids. And what we realized is that we had not done enough listening to our own staff about kids and what they need and what they experience. We decided that we had to have a systemic approach to talking and disclosing and listening. We tried a lot of ideas, some good, some not so good, and we made some mistakes. For example, we realized it was a mistake to take valuable staff time and take staff out of the very environments that we expected them to exist and live in to train them, that we needed to stay close to home. And one time we invited a top psychologist to come and talk to our staff, and he spoke very clinically to them. And when staff asked, what's the level of disclosure that kids are supposed to have? Where do we know where the line is? His answer was, I don't know the limits of your liability. And so we thought, well, that didn't work. And we also realized that staff we work with often don't have the luxury of self-reflection, and sometimes they haven't even practiced self-reflection, that they're so busy doing their work that they don't take the time to think about who they are and how they show up in the world. But what we did know is that we had this amazing pool of lived experience in staff, and that was something that you couldn't buy, that education was personal, and that we had the resources in staff to make things come alive in after school. So we thought we were onto something, and that we needed to take a new approach by linking social-emotional learning to global awareness. And the thinking around this came from Carla Sanger and her experience with work in landmines in Colombia. And she thought it was possible to make the connection between the effects of landmines in Colombia and the effects of violence in communities in Los Angeles. The question was, could we make a comparison between the Columbia landmine issue and gang violence in LA that desensitizes kids so they have no emotional reaction to violence? Could we change the paradigm from little affect in children to making them alive again by creating situations and spaces that allowed them to feel a multitude of emotions? So we pulled together a 2-day think tank, and we had a retreat, and it was made up of the experts in the field of psychology, landmine work, social justice work, global civic awareness work, and we brainstormed on 4 questions. 1, what's appropriate for elementary school children to know about landmines, and what should they know? 2, what cool things are happening in science to mitigate landmines? 3, can we connect the dots between landmines and issues of relevance in our communities? And 4, if we can do that, how do we do that? The think tank participants came up with a lot of good ideas for us and a lot of activities that were in science. For example, dogs that sniff out landmines, and seeds, if you plant them when they grow, they become a different color as flowers if there's a landmine underneath them. Really good stuff. And after the retreat, we met with lead staff to debrief them about what we might do differently and to create a curriculum and activities. We knew there was a connection between landmines and an issue and a recurring theme in Greater Los Angeles, safety amidst violence and drugs. So we asked ourselves the question, could we identify common issues throughout the city that could develop as building blocks for development of activities for LA's best staff and students for after-school programs to be as relevant as real-world issues? We didn't want to be on the nose of traditional conflict resolution and problem-solving curriculum. We wanted to do something different. We wanted to create a different avenue. We wanted to create a different on-ramp that would really cut to the relevance of what was happening in our neighborhoods and broaden world experience for our staff and our kids. Could we embed a project in our practice that would expand their experience? So in June of 2006, we took LA's best schools and divided them into 8 regions, and we had focus groups. And we selected the participants by the zip code that they worked and lived in the same zip code. And the facilitators were LA's best board members who had experience in facilitation. And there were 10 to 15 staff in each group, and they represented line staff, site coordinators, and support personnel. And the purpose was to hear about community issues in order to find out what was happening in our communities and what was happening with LA's best students. We thought, or at least we thought we knew, that we would get issues like drugs, violence, crime, access to parks, issues of health care. And we asked questions like, what does your community mean to you? What do you think the strengths and resources are in your community? What about your community makes you feel connected? What makes you feel disconnected? What are the challenges your community faces? What gives you a sense of hope? And what gives you a sense of despair or concern? And then after that focus group, we had a group of parents get together with Dr. Bob Ross from the California Endowment, and he talked to parents about what was the relevant issues in their community, what were their concerns for their children, what did they think about, what did they want to know. And Carla Sanger spoke to them about what did they feel their environments were like. And we got amazing and overwhelming responses. So we made the decision to move forward with the idea of a unique system-wide curriculum to reduce the tolerance for violence. We took all the stuff we got, and during the summer of 2008, we had our staff work with the development team at Development Without Limits to put together a curriculum that would address the issues of ways in how staff understand how to listen to children and how they work with children.